Phumulani Ntuli is a prominent multidisciplinary artist, known for his ability to weave together various forms of artistic expression. And so his recent solo exhibition at the University of Johannesburg translates to images Oozes Mist. It showcases his unique artistic expression, where the title itself suggests a sense of fluidity and transience, but also reflects the ephemeral nature of memories, culture, as well as personal narratives. So his use of mist as a metaphor then alludes to both the obscured aspects of truth and the clarity that emerges through introspection and exploration. And so for more, he joins us in studio to chat further. Phumulani, good morning. Thank you for joining us at this hour.
Thank you very much for the interview.
I mean, this is a nuanced offering, and I wonder if you're looking at the inspiration behind it all, but perhaps anything that has contributed to you slowing down to tap into that messaging. What would that process have been like for you, and what would have inspired you?
Yeah, partly I do kind of withdraw from archive material. I've been more interested in the state of images specifically, and how the posterity of the image really translates from its futurity, looking at the history obviously as a starting point. And also it's interesting that you're speaking about the truth and the obscurity of the images, because of course currently these are the themes that like really responds to how people relate to images specifically.
But I mean, I'm also looking at it play out in society at large. If we're going to use that as a mirror to reflect ourselves back to ourselves, what was on earth for you personally then?
Of course, I have to start from my own personal point of view already, as a starting point, as a departure to really open that space. From my experience, obviously, I am quite keen in the interest of technology, and I'm constantly thinking around, of course, specific algorithms like certain softwares and the certain biases that really exist. There is, of course, like quite a vast interest in like open source technologies, which obviously open. And of course the data as well, its kind of openness allows really some forms of flexibility. And of course these are tools that, you know, generally artists are really open to use on a day-to-day basis.
Yes, and that's why I wonder, when you translate all of that, the mediums that you decide to explore it through, what did you choose, perhaps also why? What did they encompass for you?
The mediums that I specifically work with is collage, because of its, of course, kind of openness and its playfulness as well. Because of course, the playfulness of image making allows some kind of entrance for different audiences that they can really relate to the work. I also use stop animation, and in relation to that, I kind of work with like developers to like really think about what kind of programs can we kind of play around with, like using web VR and XR as well, to kind of also allow a bit of like engagement with different audiences. Because of course people are just generally use like holding their cell phones.
Yeah, no, true, and it becomes a conversation starter then, right? And I wonder, if I were to ask you what was the most challenging aspect of it all, what would come to mind? Is it fair to even ask what your favorite part about it all would also be?
Yeah. I think, the challenges are obviously there with technology. It's just quite a really demanding kind of aspect. It is also quite very expensive as well.
Yeah.
And it's also, there's a question of ecology that comes with it. I mean, think about OpenAI or AI generally and its use of like energy. There's quite a lot of energy kind of used in this case. But my also kind of more interest is like animation, because I like kind of really looking at static images and seeing how they can really perform or being enhanced in terms of animation, of, you know, doing certain things.
Waste energy is definitely something that obviously is a byproduct that you know, we need to look at how we mitigate against, particularly if we're looking at the bigger picture of our planet and really how that, and safeguarding ourselves against that, or life forms itself. I wonder if you're looking at, you know, the solo exhibition and contrasting it to some of your previous works as well. How would you translate that growth? I know that you have a child. I know that adds a different layer and dimension. But yeah, how would you say it's juxtapose them?
Yeah, I mean, of course, my research kind of interest has been quite the same. So I kind of look at different, maybe emerging forms of doing things that really responds to how my work also plays a part in between that. And And of course, these are questions that I'm thinking about on a day-to-day basis. What's going to happen to my data, for example,
yes.
At the later date. So it's things that I also kind of think about, maybe to put like certain systems in place, to think about like, how to handle my data specifically.
Yes, data is king at this point.
Yeah.
And obviously in this fourth industrial revolution, that becomes a commodity of sorts. And so you're speaking about algorithms and bias, but even AI, your concerns about a centralized data system. Who then controls that? What does that mean for the centuries going forward? What are your biggest concerns? But then also, what are the biggest opportunities available at this point? If we are going to teach it about ourselves, what would you like those biases to look like, rather?
Yeah, I think my most biggest concern is actually managing our own data. Like each individual has to like really like tap into the idea of like, owning their own data, and like kind of paying too much attention on how that really plays a part in the ecology of image making, video production, from a personal point of view, taking selfies and stuff like that. As much as these are already like my concern, I've already kind of used my work as a starting point, like on a, in a general sense.
Yes, because it's about agency as well, right? And making sure that the story we tell adds to our agency, doesn't detract from that. And I wonder if we're going to look at Africa perhaps as well and completing that story. Do you think we're doing enough? Do you think we're conscious enough about it, intentional enough about it?
I think, yeah, definitely there is like some, maybe a bit of like emergence in terms of like mitigating all these like conflicts or problems really with like technology image making, because of course it is quite an interesting or big kind of research point, at this point. But I would say there is like, small pockets of things that happen, of course, within the continent. And obviously art is also like a starting point to really think about these questions, like cultural production, how it can also be decentralized itself, of course, and how it becomes like an industry as well.
Yes.
Because it obviously contributes to the GDP. And
absolutely, the creative economy, and just also that vibrancy that the youth that you find on the continent at large, will contribute and encompass as well. A lot more questions and answers at this point, but I thank you for being part of that conversation starter and for being part of that story that carries our agency as well. This is the future. The future is now.
Yes,
so we're obviously going to control it by looking at how intentional we are about our offerings. Thank you for your time at this hour. Fine artist Phumulani Ntuli joining us this morning to chat about his solo exhibition. It's currently showcasing at the University of Johannesburg.